Number 5. The Anguished Man. The tale of this rather disturbing-looking painting is strange and steeped in mystery, but every scant piece of information we have on it is more unsettling than the last. The painting of a featureless man who seems to be screaming was apparently painted by a deeply troubled artist who mixed his own blood with his paints in an effort to get the right shade of red. Not long after completing it, the artist took his own life, and the painting found its way into a woman's care. She kept it for many years, but claimed that once she put the painting up, her and her family began to see a dark, shadowy figure roaming about their house. At night, they would hear strange sounds like footsteps and crying. The woman took the painting down and kept it locked in her attic for 25 years until she died, leaving the painting to its current caretaker, Sean Robinson. Sean had been warned by his grandmother that the painting was haunted, but he thought little of it. Robinson kept the painting in his basement for about a decade before rediscovering it and putting it up. Once again, the family began seeing the dark, shadowy figure roaming the halls and hearing the sound of weeping and moaning during the night. Sean began leaving a camera on by the painting to try and get evidence of its paranormal nature, and upon reviewing the footage, heard some odd noises and saw evidence of doors opening and closing seemingly by themselves, and the painting falling over onto the ground. As time went on, the activity became more and more intense, with his wife seeing a strange mist and an unseen force pushing his son down the stairs. Things went from bad to worse when guests who came to see the painting began reporting intense and sudden nosebleeds. Sean takes the painting out from time to time to show it to paranormal investigators and television programs who want to hear his story, but otherwise, the Anguished Man is apparently kept locked away in a safe location to prevent any further harm from coming to unwitting people. Number 4. Robert the Evil Doll. We've all heard of the cursed Annabelle doll that has permeated pop culture for the last decade, but have you heard of Robert? Robert was a gift to a young boy of the same name, Robert Eugene Otto, from his grandfather. The grandfather had been traveling in Germany and came across the doll who was not intended to be a toy, but a window display. He bought the doll for his grandson, who dressed it in a sailor's outfit that he had outgrown and kept it with him at almost all times. As the young boy grew up, witnesses remember his relationship with the doll seemed to grow more and more unhealthy, with him referring to the doll as a living person and blaming mishaps on him. The boy, who went by his middle name, Gene, grew up to be an eccentric artist in a stately home known as the Artist's House. He kept Robert by the upstairs window, where children claimed to see him moving in and out of view. When Gene died in 1974, the new owner of the house, Myrtle Reuter, found the doll and became its new owner. Visitors of the house began reporting the sound of giggling and footsteps coming from the attic where the doll was being kept. When the doll was around people who spoke ill of its original owner, some claim that his facial expression seemed to change. After Myrtle got sick of the doll apparently moving around the home by itself and scaring guests for 20 years, she chose to donate Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. Robert now resides in a locked display case to prevent the over 120-year-old doll from decaying further, but also to protect the visitors of the museum. But even those precautions don't seem to always work. Guests who insult Robert at the museum report experiencing tragedies in their lives not long after. This has ranged from people losing their jobs, getting divorced, breaking bones, getting into automobile accidents, and even a few deaths. The doll reportedly receives letters every day from admirers, people wanting the doll to curse their enemies, and a few from people asking Robert to reverse the curse they believe he has laid upon them. Number 3. The Women from Lem statue. This limestone statue, also known as the Goddess of Death, was discovered in Lem, Cyprus in 1878. Its purpose, or exactly what it was meant to portray, has been lost to time, but many experts believe it may be a fertility statue of an unknown goddess. Whatever the reason for the carving, experts have concluded that it was carved sometime around 3500 BC. After being found in 1878, it was purchased by a man named Lord Elfont. Within 6 years of having acquired the object, Elfont and all 6 of his family members had died under mysterious circumstances. The statue passed to a man named Ivor Manucci, who died along with his entire family within 4 years of the purchase. The same thing happened to its next owner, Lord Thompson Noel, and his family. The statue seemed to disappear for a time before being acquired by Sir Alan Biverbrook, who had a wife, 2 daughters, and 2 sons. Yet again, family members began to drop like flies, with Biverbrook, his daughters, and his wife all passing within a few years. Fearing that they would be next, Biverbrook's sons decided to donate the statue to the Royal Museum in Edinburgh, Scotland, where it was soon put on display. However, the statue was not quite done, and the curator who had handled the statue mysteriously died the next year. The statue is still on display to this day, locked in a heavy glass display case. Number 2. Thomas Busby's chair. Our next entry takes us to North Yorkshire in 1702, when 2 criminals, Daniel Oddie and his son-in-law Thomas Busby, came into conflict. They were coin forgers who essentially ran a criminal empire, but Daniel disapproved of Tom's relationship with his daughter. This resulted in a fight, which ended with Daniel's untimely demise. Thomas was arrested soon afterwards and sentenced to be hanged. There is some variation in what happened next. Some versions of the tale say that Thomas was arrested at his favorite pub, and others say he was allowed back into the bar for his last drink before his death. Whatever the case, before being taken away, he told the other patrons of the pub, "May sudden death come to anyone who dare sit in my chair." He was then taken away and as the local historian and poet William Grange described it, the bones of the poor wretch who had committed murder to fester in the sunshine and blow in the tempest until they fell piecemeal to earth, and tradition yet tells tales of night wanderers being terrified when passing the dreaded spot. While Thomas began apparently haunting the spot across from the inn where his remains were displayed, the curse he laid on the chair began taking effect. Over the years, many brave souls sat on the chair to prove they were not afraid and paid the price. In 1894, a chimney sweep sat in the chair and was found the next day hanging next to where Busby had been displayed. In 1967, 2 Air Force pilots sat in the chair as a joke, but when they were driving home that night, they crashed into a tree and did not survive. A few years later, a builder sat in the chair and fell off a roof later that same night. Not long after, a cleaner fell into the chair after slipping while mopping the floor and died of a brain tumor soon after. In 1978, the owner of the now renamed Busby Stoop Inn decided that too many deaths had occurred and donated the chair to the Thirsk Museum. Although they didn't technically lock the chair away, they did hang the chair on the wall, 5 feet off the ground, to prevent anyone from sitting on it and receiving Busby's fatal curse. Number 1. The Basano Vase. Although it has fallen out of favor now, for centuries, a common gift given to brides on the day of their weddings were intricate ornate vases. Our next tale begins in the 15th century Italy and spans over 500 years. Legend says that on the day of her wedding, a bride in a village near Napoli found a gift with no clue which of the guests had given it to her. It was a 4-pound silver vase. She decided to put it in her room for safekeeping before the wedding ceremony, but when the ceremony was due to start, the bride was nowhere to be found. The groom went to her room to look for her and found her lifeless body on the ground, with no trace of what had caused the death, other than her desperately clutching the silver vase. The bride was buried, and the vase was passed on to one of her family members to be taken care of. Within days, the second member of the family was dead from unknown causes. The vase was given to another member of the family, and when he also passed away, the family made the connection between all the recent tragedies and the Basano vase. Unsure what to do, they reached out to a local priest who, upon hearing the story, informed them that whoever had given it to the bride had either cursed it or made it from cursed materials. He advised them to bury it on sacred grounds. They dug a hole and wrote a note warning, "Beware. This vase brings death," which they placed inside the cursed vase. The vase was buried and remained underground for the next 500 years. By horrible chance, a man in 1988 was digging and came across the vase. He read the note, but being the skeptical type, discarded it and took the newly found Basano vase to a local auction house. The vase went up for auction and was sold for the equivalent of $2,270 to the local pharmacist. Within 3 months, the pharmacist was dead, and the vase was sold by his family to a local doctor, who also passed away soon after. The vase developed a reputation after this, and several people who were approached to purchase it refused, but it was eventually bought by an archaeologist who, despite his family's protests, did not believe in curses. He died 3 months later. His family threw the vase out their window, but a police officer who was passing by saw this and tried to return it. The family refused the vase back and told him of its cursed nature. He tried to give it to multiple different museums, but having heard about the curse, they all refused. Fearing for his life, he did what the bride's family had done over 500 years prior, and buried it in a lead box in a cemetery. Which cemetery he used is unknown, but let us hope that no unwitting soul rediscovers this cursed vase and unleashes it upon humanity once again.
Number 5. The Basano Vase. When we think of cursed objects, we start to go through the classics, you know, haunted dolls, haunted paintings, even the old haunted diamond. You don't tend to think of haunted glassware. Well, let the Basano Vase introduce itself. A seemingly unassuming piece of home decor, this sinister flower pot carries with it a deadly curse and legacy. First crafted in the 15th century, the Basano Vase was given to a bride as a wedding gift in Napoli, Italy. The day of the wedding, the husband couldn't find his betrothed anywhere. Upon returning home, he found her on the floor, clutching the vase. After her funeral, the vase was given out to one of her family members, who then fell ill within days and had passed away. Of course, no one assumed the vase had anything to do with it, why would it? Despite a suspicious trail already starting to form. The third person to inherit the vase also ended up passing away mysteriously. Well, after the third mysterious death in months, the family contacted a local priest for advice on their situation, and he gave them some reasonable advice. Bury it on hallowed grounds, where no one would find it again. It lay dormant until it was dug up in 1988 by an amateur antique hunter, who sold the vase off quickly, restarting the treacherous cycle where it traveled once again, ending lives mysteriously and ruining an otherwise nicely decorated living room. After its revival, it was brought to the attention of local police. They tried to pass it off to museums or cultural sites, but understandably, no one wanted anything to do with the wretched pot. So with nowhere else to turn, legend goes that the police returned it where it had once been found, buried deep beneath hallowed ground. Hopefully a little bit deeper this time, maybe in a lockbox with 3 padlocks, and throw away the keys into the ocean. You know, just to be safe. Are you enjoying yourself, my little ghouls and goblins? Click the subscribe button down below for daily frights from Top 5 Scary. Number 4. The Iceman. The Iceman cometh for us all. In 1991, on the peak of the Otsal Alps in Italy, a pair of mountaineering tourists came across what they thought was a deceased hiker, which in a grandiose sense was kind of true. Not a recent passing, however, because the Iceman in question was dated from 3000 BC. The nature of his passing is unknown, so the criminal could still be out there at large. A fascinating find for the scientific community. The Iceman, nicknamed Otzi after the mountain he was found in, shined a light on history previously unseen. Otzi was the oldest body ever discovered with tattoos. History's first bad boy, if you will. After being unearthed, the body was brought to Austria to be studied intensively, but nothing the researchers discovered could have prepared them for the curse that they had unearthed. A worrying amount of people involved in the study of the Iceman found themselves befelled to an ancient unearthed evil. The first man to discover Otzi, one of the hikers, fell off a path on a mountain to his doom. A mountaineer passed in an avalanche. A forensic pathologist was involved in a lethal car accident en route to give a speech at a university about the Iceman. In total, 7 researchers involved in the study of the Iceman and observers found themselves losing their life after meeting him. So where is the Iceman now? Hopefully supervised? Well, Otzi is currently being held in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology down in the bottom of Italy, where he is kept in a climate-controlled environment to maintain his preservation. Locked away, visitors are permitted to come see the Iceman, but only through a frozen, thick glass window. Is that room to keep him cool and preserved? Or is it to keep whatever curse lay dormant inside his bones docile? All we know is that we're thankful that Otzi's just chillin'. Number 3. The Woman of Lem. Modern art can be a bit confusing. It's hard to understand an artist's true meaning behind their work, especially when things start to get abstract. Looking at the Woman from Lem statue, it's hard to even make out what this is supposed to be. A fertility statue? Primitive bog roll holder? You wouldn't even know just by looking at it just how lethally cursed this statue is. We don't know who crafted this or why, but we do know that under no circumstances whatsoever should you ever touch the Woman of Lem statue, lest you're looking to incur the wrath of a centuries-old evil. The statue was first uncovered in 1878 in Lem, Cyprus, giving the statue its name. Carbon dating suggests the statue was formed around 3000 BC. Hey, wait a minute. Do you think Otzi the Iceman ever saw this statue? You think maybe it's the same curse? Was life just significantly more cursed back then? Now back on hand to the topic. Once the statue was found, it began to wreak havoc almost immediately. Legend says 4 families are purported to have lost someone after touching the statue. The first owner, one Lord Elfont, a lord during Cyprus's time as a colony, lost 7 members of his family after acquiring the statue. Sometime afterwards, the next lord to acquire it, Ivor Minucci, obtained the statue and lost his entire family in the span of 4 years. The next victim, one one Lord Thompson Knoll. Just like the others, his family passed away within 4 years. The stories say that eventually, his remaining surviving sons, understanding that they had a responsibility to rid themselves of this generational evil, gave the statue off to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh for safekeeping, or maybe just to pass the curse along like a vicious cycle of regifting. Within a year, the museum curator passed away mysteriously. Right now, it's still kept there, locked away behind a glass box, never to be touched again by human hands. Let's try and keep it that way. Number 2, the Hope Diamond. Now, the Hope Diamond has shown up a few times on this channel before, and for good reason. It's considered one of the most haunted objects on the planet. The diamond was first uncovered in India, with reports claiming that the diamond was plucked from the eye of a statue of the goddess Sita, the goddess of beauty and devotion. Legend has it that the first person who ever stole the diamond was attacked by dogs shortly after taking it. From here, the diamond made its way through countless hands, never staying in one pair of hands for too long though. It's said to have been owned by King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who as far as I know, never had anything too bad happen to them. You know, at least nothing worth losing your head over. That's a little history joke for you. Look up the French Revolution, or Assassin's Creed Unity. It's the same thing. Throughout the diamond's storied history, it's been said that just about every owner of the Hope Diamond suffered a horrific fate. 14 confirmed deaths and owners throughout history, and that's only the ones we know of, as there could be countless more. The jeweler who recut the stone into its current form, William Falls, died a ruined man in poverty and hardship after his son Hendrik stole the stone from his father, who would later be prompted to take his own life as repentance for his crime. After passing from owner to owner under grisly circumstances, it finally made its way to Harry Winston, an American jeweler who, possibly making the first smart choice of anyone on this list, thought it better to play with his odds, and donated the diamond to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in 1958, where it currently resides sealed away to this day. So what happened when it became museum property? Well, the curators of the Smithsonian were thrilled to receive it, and have said that they consider the gem a crown jewel of their diamond collection, and that in all the time it's been in their watch, no one has suffered any ill effects, and if anything, visitors have gone up. Maybe Indiana Jones was right. Maybe it belongs in a museum. Number 1, King Tut. Now, number 1 on our list might be a little bit esoteric. It's the curse of King Tutankhamun, so not quite an object, but worth noting. King Tutankhamun, or King Tut as his close friends like to call him, is arguably the most famous pharaoh of all time. Uncovering his tomb was a landmark moment in Egyptology and archaeology, with his tomb serving as something of a golden goose for archaeologist Howard Carter, who spearheaded the excavation attempts of King Tut's tomb. It took years upon years of concentrated efforts hunting for it, but in 1922, Howard Carter, under the commission of Lord Carnarvon, uncovered the late pharaoh's mighty tomb. Howard Carter, Lord Carnarvon, and their companion Evelyn Beauchamp, the daughter of Carnarvon, were the first people to ever step inside King Tutankhamun's resting place in centuries. Unfortunately, it wouldn't go so well for them. The first victim was Lord Carnarvon. Upon entering the tomb, he was bitten by a mosquito, and mere weeks later, the bite became deeply infected, poisoning his blood, leading to a loss of life. The author of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, upon reading this story in the news, had theorized that there was a curse put in place by the old gods watching over Tutankhamun's tomb. And that's the guy who created Sherlock Holmes, so let's assume he's probably pretty smart and doesn't just jump to conclusions. The next victim, George Gould, was a visitor to the tomb who developed an intense fever shortly after walking through it. Within months, he had passed away. Next was A.C. Mace, a digger on the excavation team, passed from an intense case of pneumonia shortly after his involvement. Howard Carter's secretary, Captain Bethel, was the next victim, passing away 6 years after the unearthing under mysterious circumstances, believed to have been smothered in his sleep. Now, Howard Carter, the original excavationist who helmed the venture, didn't believe anything about the curse, claiming that it was all superstition and coincidence, not fitting an educated man. He complained, however, that after unearthing the tomb, whenever he would visit Egypt, he noticed repeated sightings of jackals, the same type of Anubis, the Egyptian god of the dead. Which, I've gotta say, if I recently uncovered a legendary pharaoh and interrupted his slumber to plunder his riches for my personal gain, I would probably be a bit wary about seeing a symbol of the god of the dead following me around. 16 years later, Howard Carter would pass away of Hodgkin's disease. Could he have been the last victim of the curse, or did he manage to escape its throes? The king still rests in his tomb in Cairo, where he shall not be disturbed. You're more than welcome to go visit him if you'd like, but please, be respectful.
Number 5. F. Uluru Rock. If you're heading down under for a vacation this year, well, there's a certain object that remains very cursed there that people don't really recommend you tamper with. And it's huge. Uluru Rock. Yeah, this massive sandstone monolith in Australia was discovered on paper in 1873 by surveyor William Goss. He named the landmark Ayers Rock in honor of the then Chief Secretary of South Australia, Sir Henry Ayers. Known as such, of course, until 1993 when it was officially renamed to Uluru, honoring the title originally given to the Anangu First Nations peoples, to whom the site is sacred and, more importantly, home. This thing is strange. First off, this place is highly sacred, stumbled upon by the First Nations people of the northern Aussie area for who knows how long. This site has been known over the eons to have strange powers though, i.e. any tampering, stealing, defacing, or slandering the megalith is a sure way to test your luck against, well, the universe. This place shouldn't be messed with. One man stole a chunk of rock from the monument and experienced so much bad luck that he actually drove 3,000 kilometers to return it in person, in an attempt to rid himself of the karma he believed was attached to him. The chip was returned 40 years later. The largest piece of rock that was ever returned back to the site weighed more than 70 pounds. Yeah, this is serious stuff. First off, how the hell did you sneak that off the site? Like, did he just back his truck up to it like, yeah, just chip that big rock off, put it all in. He apparently wrote, "Dear Australia, I am so sorry I took this piece of Uluru. I wanted a piece of Australia to take home with me and this was the wrong thing to take. I hope Australia can forgive me and welcome me if I ever come back. Signed, an unwise traveler." Yeah, the reason they advise visitors not to take anything is the paranormal omens connected to said rock. Also, this is a giant rock we're looking at, like only a tenth of its mass you can see. It's like an iceberg, like underground. So before you experience any bad luck, illness, or karma beyond karma any day soon, I'd just collect seashells and skip this whole thing. No? Number 4, the Voynich Manuscript. As always, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, make sure to hit that like button down below or comment down below which archaeological find you know of that has impending doom upon the discoverer. I love this stuff. It's scary beyond all belief, but it's interesting. We're all about it here. And speaking of, so apparently there's a giant Italian Renaissance-ish folio called the Voynich Manuscript. It's named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish-Lithuanian book dealer who purchased it in 1912. Yeah, we don't really know what this thing is. One thing it most certainly is would be the most bizarre and mysterious book of all time. 100%. Not only is it detailed so carefully and patiently, it's all like Tim Burton-like, with an entire world drawn and recorded that isn't ours. Like, is this a parallel universe book? Is this language even known? Like, it's unknown, like predates Latin and doesn't even use phonetic patterns and coding. It's the riddle of all riddles. Written in the 15th century, somewhere they think between 1405 and 1450, all 240 pages are inscribed in some sort of indecipherable language, with a small alphabet only of about 170,000 characters. Yeah, it's gonna take a while for them to crack this one. The contents alone have cursed people mad, with obscure visions and obsessions for years. My precious. Historians and cartographers have tried to crack the code for hundreds of years, yet not one has been successful. Why wasn't this a national treasure movie? I feel like this would have been perfect. Was it written by people from another world? An unknown species? It's so familiar yet so alien. Radiocarbon dating from the University of Arizona proved for all pages tested that once started, the writing was continuous for like 20 years. Protein testing revealed that the parchment was actually skin. About 150 calves slain for this Goliath mystery. It remains at Yale, waiting to be decoded to this day. Creepy! Number 3, metal balls. So, metallic floating shiny balls have been recorded for years. Giant metallic balls like this have been found literally littered around the planet for decades, apparently. Ufologist and professor at Stanford Gary Nolan is currently studying these metal Malteser looking things right now that people have collected and auctioned off since the 50s. Right now in Texas there's a dude who has a ton of these apparent real alien tech. Jim Marlin, famous music producer, was given these metal giant pinball looking spheres by a celebrity's bodyguard apparently, who said that they were dropped from a craft in his backyard in the early 50s. And like, a lot of celebrities have touched these. Dennis Hopper, Jane Fonda, that's Hollywood people. These things are famous on their own. They also move on their own, and apparently hold power and light up once in a while on their own. Yeah, That's not scary at all. Hey dad, after Survivor, can you just move your metal giant floating balls out of the living room? Yeah, mom asked me to ask you. In the 70s, the Betts family of Florida came across a small metal sphere the size of a bowling ball in the woods behind their house. Their first thought was the sphere was an old cannonball from a battle. They decided to take the sphere home, and when the sphere seemed to react to the sound of music in the house, making a throbbing, pulsating noise, later the sphere was even seen rolling on its own and would even stop and change direction in the house. Yeah, that's terrifying. Even the Navy went there and checked out these giant mysterious metal orbs. Every time I'm on Reddit seeing these like light orbs trucking around the skies, I can't help but think, is that them? Like, that's them. One thing's for sure, they don't seem to be made here. Number 2, the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an anomaly on its own. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's basically an ancient computer that uses the cosmos to predict astronomical events. Thought to have been the first analog computer ever created, and no, it wasn't made in a garage in 1997 somewhere. It was invented by who knows who, like 2,000 years ago. Captain Dimitrios Kontos and his crew of sea sponge divers discovered the Antikythera shipwreck in early 1900 just off Antikythera in Greece, hence the name. I also find it hilarious that divers diving for something you wipe your butt with found an ancient computer. Like, something about that just amuses me. They recovered tons of artifacts during the expedition, helping pull up the shipwreck and this precious baby. Many thought it was cursed immediately after its first handlings. Apparently after its discovery, 3 of the divers who dove down died shortly after its find. Presumably, of course, of the bends, of overwork, but locals think this device was to blame. At 150 feet deep, just off Point Glyphadia, the Greek island, the team retrieved millions in bronze and marble statues, pottery, glassware, jewelry, coins, and this ancient mechanism. It was a find of a century and still is. The device is made entirely out of a single bronze sheet, built in a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. The case and its faces are covered with Greek inscriptions, which indicate the device's astronomical and calendrical purpose. It's basically a computer built entirely out of cogs, wheels, gears, and faces, and it would tell you where you were amongst the cosmos. The first alarm clock, computer, calendar hybrid. Again, 2,200 years ago. Like, no machinery, no watches, no laser cutters. Basically everything we have in our iPhones right now within a wooden box 2,000 years ago. Again, it's funny, they were collecting sea sponges to wipe our butts and then stumbled upon a computer. Yeah. You can find it at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. And number 1, the Codex Gigas. Obviously, this one's gonna be my number 1 pick. Apparently it translates to giant book, and it's big. It weighs about 170 pounds. Yeah, I'm kind of like really uncomfortable what I've learned and read about this book. It's the largest medieval manuscript in the world. The manuscript is also known as the Devil's Bible due to its highly unusual full-page portrait and detail of Satan and the legends surrounding its creation. Illuminated Bibles were a typical feature of Roman monastic books, but even with this one, the page size alone of the Gigas is notably larger for its time, and it's made out of about 180 donkeys. Yeah, sorry. Poor little guys. The most famous myth is that the scribe traded his soul to the Prince of Darkness himself so that he could complete the book in only one night. Everything within the book has been handwritten by a single anonymous person. Created in the early 13th century in the Benedictine monastery of Bohemia, now modern-day Czech Republic, this book holds demonic power. The manuscript contains the complete Bible, Old and New Testaments, as well as all medicinal and cosmological knowledge, all written in Latin, and predated glyphs. However, it is, unbeknownst to any of us, missing 10 pages. Yeah, just ripped out missing. It's like a movie right there. Apparently some think the Codex was created by Herman the Recluse in the Benedictine monastery in the Czech Republic before being stolen and taken to Prague by the Emperor Rudolf II, who, fun fact, also stole the Voynich Manuscript at one point. Yeah, this guy loved collecting like cursed, demonic, haunted scriptures, I guess. According to legend, the scribe was a monk who promised to create in one night a book to glorify the monastery forever, including all human knowledge. Near midnight, he became sure that he couldn't complete this task alone, so whipped out his pen and made a deal with Lucifer, asking him to help him finish the book in exchange for his soul. That's not really a good idea. It's thought it would have taken him at least 30 years non-stop writing to complete it. The book lays in the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm, where it is on display for the general public. Dude, I can't read Goosebumps without having nightmares, let alone going near this thing? Nah. I'm good.
Our first spot is the Anguished Man painting, a painting that's been said to be haunted by the spirit of its former artist. The Anguished Man was painted by... we have no idea, actually. Fittingly, for something like this, its true origin is a mystery, but it's been said that it was painted with a mixture of the artist's own blood and paint, which explains that delightful crimson hue. The artist disappeared after painting it, and in 30 years, no one has been able to trace its origin to anyone. The earliest recorded history of the Anguished Man comes from a woman in North England who owned the painting after receiving it as a gift, and understood that there was something deeply, deeply wrong with it, but kept it anyway, I guess. After years of having it in her possession, she gave the relic off and passed it on to her grandson, Sean Robinson. Once the painting found its way into Sean's possession, he reported consistent hauntings from it, claiming that at night the painting can be heard screaming, writhing, loud noises, the painting falling off the wall in the middle of the night, and even going so far as to claim that he's seen the canvas itself twisting. Locking the painting in his basement, but feeling a compulsion to keep it locked to study it and possibly keep it safe from the outside world, Sean has recorded several videos of the Anguished Man in action if you feel like you've been getting too much sleep lately. While some skeptics might doubt that the Anguished Man is actually haunted, there is absolutely zero doubt that the painting itself is as fascinating as it is terrifying. Robert the Doll. At first glance already seems a bit unsettling, between his empty smile and the blank expression of the pet sitting on his lap. If only it ended there. Legend has it that this century-old doll is home to a malevolent spirit locked away. It's been said that misfortune comes to those who don't respect him or insult him. Robert's story begins over 100 years ago, and his true origin is somewhat disputed. It's agreed that he was owned by Robert Jean Otto, who received it as a boy, but some people claim that it was a gift from his grandfather, while locals prefer to claim nefariously that the doll was given to Robert by a servant of the house who hexed it out of resentment. Whatever the case, Robert brought trouble with him. The real Robert, or Jean as he went by, would refer to the doll as if it was a living entity, claiming that it had a will of its own. When things around the house would break, like the rest of Jean's toys being destroyed, he'd claim that Robert had done it. The family would find Jean in the middle of the night, wailing, surrounded by overturned furniture, claiming once again that Robert had done it. People would claim to see Robert out of the windows, appearing and disappearing at seemingly random times of day. While Jean no longer owns Robert, of course, Robert lives in the East Martello Museum in Florida, where it's said that even locked up he still causes havoc, causing electronics to malfunction and go haywire. Employees have reported sleepless nights, strange noises, streaks of bad luck after spending time around Robert. The museum claims too Robert gets 1 to 3 letters a day from people asking for forgiveness or asking him to place a curse on others. If you're ever in the area and you feel like checking in, just make sure you're respectful about it, okay? You never know. Number 3, the Delphi Sapphire. The Delphi Sapphire is a seemingly beautiful gem that carries with it a dark legacy. It's also known as the Gem of Sorrow, named for the misfortune it brings upon all those who've owned it. Its first owner was a British cavalryman named Colonel Ferris, who stole the gem from a sacred temple in India in the 18th century. Soon after returning to England, he was plagued with financial destitution, bringing his family to the brink of collapse. Shortly after this, his family all started to develop debilitating diseases. Ferris suspected that the gem was responsible for these wrongdoings, and attempted to pass it off to a family friend who fell gravely ill immediately after taking it in. Shortly after Ferris's friend passed, the gem was bought by Edward Heron Allen, a scientist who similarly experienced his life falling apart after acquiring the gem. In a desperate attempt to free himself of the curse, Edward threw the gem into Regent's Canal, thinking that he'd freed himself of the accursed stone. Sadly, much like the one true ring, this gem wasn't going to stay at the bottom of a river. It was fished out of the canal and quickly sold to a local jeweler, who recognized the stone as one he had mounted onto a ring for a client, one Edward Heron Allen. Thinking he was doing Edward a favor, the jeweler crafted a new ring and returned it to Edward. Isn't that nice? From there on, Edward swiftly tried to rid himself of it again, this time giving it off to a singer, who after a brief ownership, lost her voice entirely and never sang again. With the ring once again in his possession, Edward decided to end the vicious cycle of regifting and lock the sapphire away. He locked it in 7 stacked boxes surrounded by good luck charms, and gave it to his bank to store in their vault until his passing. Never to be opened, never to be sold. Heron even advised the bank that after his passing, it should be kept for another 33 years, just in case there was any residual curse smell in the box, I guess. Anyway, eventually, the sapphire found its way to a museum, as these things always do, who upon opening the 7 boxes found inside a letter reading, "This sapphire is accursed, and stained with the blood and dishonor of everyone who has ever owned it. Whoever opens this box, do with it what you wish. My advice, however, is to throw it into the sea." Number 2, James Dean's car. Absolutely nothing is cooler than driving a souped-up Porsche, and in the 1950s, there was no one cooler than James Dean. Aside from being the cultural face of 1950s teenage delusionment and an icon for outcasts of his day, James Dean had a passion for cars and racing, and had a collection of impeccable Porsches, although the last one he would ever own was a Porsche Spyder 550. It was actually commissioned for Dean, and was one of the first makes of that car produced. A souped-up Porsche capable of race speeds, it seemed like the perfect car for a hot-headed rebel. But from the moment he got it, people were wary. A friend of Dean's, actor Alec Guinness, wrote in his diary after meeting James with the car that the sports car looked sinister to me. Exhausted, hungry. I found myself saying in a voice I could hardly recognize, "Please never get in that car. You will be found dead." Normally any friend telling you outright not to get into a car would be worth paying attention to, but I feel like special triple warning should be heeded if it was Obi-Wan Kenobi telling me not to do it. Sure enough, Dean ignored, went ahead and raced the car anyway, leading to a tragic car accident that would claim the actor's life. Shortly thereafter, the Spider was chopped for parts, where its engine was bought by Dr. William Eskrick and installed in his own car. The suspension and transmission of the Spider was given to Eskrick's colleague and fellow doctor and racing enthusiast, Troy McHenry. In a race in 1956, both doctors driving cars with the Porsche's old parts both crashed, leading to the death of McHenry and injuring Eskrick. Somehow, not learning any lessons, the self-proclaimed king of customs, George Barris, purchased the mangled wreck of the 550, hoping to rebuild it as a tourist attraction, where it was sold to the National Safety Council as a harrowing display of road safety. In 1959, while in storage, the car spontaneously caught flame. The tires were sold to a private buyer who had them burst on the road, causing them to careen off. And finally, in 1960, while in transit from Miami, the car disappeared entirely. The whereabouts of the car and its pieces are currently unknown, with the only confirmed part left being a transaxle that was found in Massachusetts. And finally, at our number one spot, the Devil's Rocking Chair. When we think of a devil sitting atop a throne, our mind isn't likely to conjure up the image of a rocking chair. That's more for kindly old grandparents. But for the Glatzel family, it was all too real. Seemingly an unassuming piece of leisure furniture, this twisted piece of haunted mahogany became the focus of one of America's most notorious exorcisms. In the early 1980s, the young son of the Glatzel family, David Glatzel, claimed that he was being plagued by nightmares of a creature with jagged teeth, twisted horns, and hooves. And the family was worried, as the boy wasn't really the kind to make things up. The boy insisted that he would see this beast sitting in the chair, rocking, watching him, laughing, threatening to steal his soul away. You know, regular old imaginary friend stuff. The visions persisted and even manifested physically, with David waking up in the middle of the night with scratches, bruises, and cuts, as well as red marks around his neck, as if something had been grabbing his throat. He would convulse during the night, and a family member would watch him sleep, as he would have seizures repeatedly. David started to hiss and growl at his family, and even was reported to have spoken tongues, quoting from the Bible. Eventually it became too much for the family to bear, and professional help was brought in from, who else? Ed and Lorraine Warren, who performed multiple exorcisms, and brought in a series of priests to try and quell the spirits inside the house. Lorraine asserts that she saw the chair levitate in her time there. After a final exorcism, it's reported that the demon left young David, but found its way into his sister's fiance, one Arn Johnson. She reported the same growls, hissing, as well as slipping into periodic trances he couldn't be shook from. Tragically, Arn was involved in a conflict that led to the death of his landlord, and when he stood trial for it, insisted that he hadn't acted on it, but rather it was the demon possessing him that made him do it. He was locked away. After these dark events, the chair was kept away in storage, for fear that its evils might seep into the rest of the world. It resides now in the Haunted Museum, owned by Zach Baggins himself, one of the world's foremost experts on the paranormal, and a sort of modern successor to the Warrens, who's indisputably the wisest man to be owning something like this. Let's just hope he's not looking to get comfortable in it anytime soon.
Number 5. The Pearls of Death. We know the Warrens. If that name doesn't sound familiar, check out some of the other vids on who they were on this channel. They were a pretty spooky duo. They've seen some nightmarish stuff in their time, and still have some proof of the evil that they vanquished. Their son-in-law still runs the official occult museum website and museum out of Monroe, Connecticut. Now, if you've seen Annabelle Comes Home, this first item on the list should ring a bell. The character Daniela in the movie tries to communicate to a loved one beyond the grave. Never a good idea, unless you're with the Long Island medium, you know? Stick with the professionals. In order to do that, however, she puts on the museum's mourning bracelet. Yeah, that's not really a good idea there, Daniela. Now, there isn't really a mourning bracelet in the real occult museum, but there is such a thing as the Pearls of Death. And as of now, the Pearls of Death still have yet to appear in the Conjuring franchise. But they're notoriously one of the most dangerous items in the Warrens Museum, says their son-in-law, and very, very real. Beautiful accessory, I should add, but a very haunted and spirited set of pearls. They were added to the museum after a woman claimed that they were constantly strangling her. The Pearls of Death are said to strangle those who wear them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Get a bigger size, right? Well, it wasn't the wrong fit, per se, but like, choked aggressively. The story goes, the second that this poor woman put on these pearls, she literally needed people around her to even yank the pearls from its death grip around her neck. Yo, that is terrifying. Sometimes when I sleep with my chain on, I feel like I'm in a triangle choke in the UFC. But thankfully for us, the curls currently rest on the Warren shelves, where they'll hopefully stay for the foreseeable future. Tony Spera, the son-in-law of the Warrens and current owner-operator, says, it all goes way back with the cursed objects. Objects that someone put a curse onto. It could be a bracelet, a necklace, or any article that someone performed incantations and rituals over to put bad energy into, as someone or something famously did to the Annabelle doll. I feel like just talking about her, she's gonna show up. In the same way a priest can bless a holy relic, a satanic worshiper or black magic practitioner can curse a belonging, as seen with the Pearls of Death. Number 4, the werewolf paw. As always, if you dig what we do here on Top 5 Scary, hit that like button or feel free to leave us a comment down below. Let us know which James Wan Warren story is your favorite. I mean, nothing beats the David's exorcism scene in The Conjuring 3. Yeah, spoiler alert, it's uncomfortable to watch. Some of you will get it. Scariest thing I've ever seen in my life, I swear to God. However, in Annabelle Comes Home, we see another terrifying object just chilling on the shelf, a werewolf claw. Later in the movie, we even see a real werewolf demon thing outside the Warrens' house. And of course, according to Tony Spera, the werewolf paw is a nod to the real 1980s werewolf case that took the Warrens all the way to London, England. A true story of demonic possession, and not just normal demonic possession. That's a weird sentence to say out loud. But we know about this case. Apparently, they watched a television program, Sightings, and police officers and locals got interviewed about their encounters with a real local werewolf, the infamous Bill Ramsey. They said his abilities to take on men twice his size with ease as he would rampage through the city, blacking out. Lorraine felt a connection to him, and after traveling to London, she found Bill. According to Lorraine, he was possessed by an evil wolf spirit and needed a full-blown exorcism. The exorcism was a success on American soil, and Bill was able to return home, ready to start the rest of his non-lycanthropic days. He wouldn't grow hair or change at a full moon, but he used his fingers like claws, attacked people, and even would run around on all fours. Could this wolf paw in the museum be responsible for the werewolf case in London? I think it might. Number 3, the cursed brick. Perhaps one of the least terrifying items on this list is a brick from the Borley Rectory, aka a brick from one of the most haunted houses in all of England. The house was originally built back in 1862. It was a house built for the rector of Borley, but after a fire in 1939, it was never rebuilt. It was finally demolished after in 1944, but before its final days, Harry Price, a paranormal researcher at the time, reported numerous ghostly sightings, including a ghost nun, a ghost car passing by, as well as numerous horse and buggy sounds on the property. That's terrifying. Yep. A little piece of the haunted home sits in the Warren Occult Museum today, as they were able to visit the Borley Rectory before it was demolished. According to local folklore, a nun fell in love with a monk from the monastery, and the pair attempted to elope together. They were found and sentenced to death. The monk was reported to have been sent to the gallows in the monastery, whilst the nun was sealed into the walls of the nunnery alive. Ouch. This nun is believed to be the one that is seen on the grounds of the Borley Rectory, endlessly looking for the monk that she once loved. That's kind of cute. That's kind of nice. The nun has been seen and heard many times over the years, and the first reports came from 1928 when the owner Guy Eric Smith and his wife contacted a newspaper to report a strange happenings. The newspaper took on the help of an investigator, Mr. Harry Price. Mr. Price stayed at the house to research for more than a year. While staying there, Price witnessed a ton of poltergeist phenomena. Even said that he got in touch with the spirit of a past tenant, Reverend Harry Bull, who died in the house. After numerous attempts at exorcising the property, in 1930, Mr. and Mrs. Smith left the house for good. The next residents of the house were Reverend Foister and his wife Mary Ann. They both experienced the same phenomena that Price and the Smiths had witnessed before them. However, this time the poltergeist activity seemed to be a little bit more aggressive, with reports of smashed glasses, broken windows, and Mary Ann being even thrown from her bed in the middle of the night. In 1939, the house was burnt to the ground due to an oil lamp. It was then left to ruins until 1944, when it was demolished. The Borley Rectory was said to have been the most haunted building in all of the UK, so although just an unassuming brick, its origin story has seen quite a bit of life and death. Number 2, black magic dolls. We already know some of the infamous museum dolls that are haunted by all hell, but we're not talking about Annabelle. There are apparently handfuls of other dolls that deserve some jarring honorable mentions. Tony Spera believes that there are dark powers that live amongst the various voodoo dolls and handmade figurines that are just casually splayed out for museum goers. Stuffed dolls like the Shadow Doll, of course, who looks like a night terror version of a twisted Muppets puppet. It's known for visiting dreamers and stopping their heart mid-nightmare with fear. Okay, that's a little excessive. So haunted, yeah. There's a satanic doll that looks like it would resemble a tall wooden man, possibly even the devil. Yeah, haunted beyond all hell. Found in the woods too, around satanic worship. Huh, could you believe? And of course, this dark magic doll. They just look haunted, you know? That off-colorization look, the facelessness, and glass casing around it. Again, that can't be a good sign. Historically, if you do this, obtaining a doll or statue or carving, add in a little dash of dark magic and voodoo, and voila, you have a very dark, cursed item. There's also a doll with no mouth and no eyes. Yeah, that's not scary at all. I think we can all agree that there's like 20 origin films like right here with each and every one of these black magic figurines. Like I understand Furbies a little bit more now, you know? Like that's a cursed item right there, 100%. Furbies belong in the Warren Museum. I'm surprised there isn't some there already. And coming at the #1 spot, the music box. And of course we had to include one of the creepiest elements of the Conjuring movies, and I guess what makes any scary movie scary. It's the music. And boy is there one haunted creepy Warren Museum object that comes to mind: the Perron family music box. Director James Wan wanted to use the actual music box in the first film because mirrors and creepy music make for the best thrillers, but also because that there is a real haunted artifact from the real case. Today, the box is safely stored in the Warrens Museum alongside all of the other spooky items that we already covered. The music though, right? Like this part in the movie actually scared the shit out of me. Like the anticipation alone. They always do it so slow too, don't they? Dun 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 dun. But it's like real life though. That's horrifying. The music box apparently caused a lot of problems for these Perron girls, specifically April, the youngest of the Perron children. She found this antique in the house and she used to communicate to spirits. In the movie, this was a happy ending, but in real life, the Bathsheba Sherman curse was never really resolved. The original OG film, The Conjuring, was one of the best haunted house movies of the last decade that arguably spawned both a franchise and a new respect for old school horror. I wonder what's next for us in the James Wan universe, cause that werewolf paw, yeah, that looks terrifying. Number 5, the organ. Music is the basis of like every good horror movie, isn't it? Music playing from the other room by itself, yeah, that scares the shit out of me. When I forget my Bluetooth is on and I hear the music from the other room, my heart skips a beat. And there's some Shakespeare sonnets on there, you know, so it sounds like some dudes in the other room just talking to me in Old English. Well, there's actually an instrument that plays by itself, apparently, every night around 9 p.m. Unless it has priests bless it to keep it only wood and ivory. Apparently it likes to play a little number or two from the other side. Residing in the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, Ed Warren, the husband of the famous demonologist duo, apparently likes his classic music. Well, not live, I should say. He obtained the organ apparently after authorities cleaned out a haunted house owned by Reverend Eliakim Phelps in Stratford, Connecticut. Somebody from the authority at the city of Stratford reached out to Ed asking him if he'd be interested in obtaining a musical instrument in which needed some special handling. Nothing like a dusty old haunted organ, like the old hockey games and churches organs, you know? Apparently one night Ed was woken up by the sounds of the chords of the organ being played. It was late at night, so naturally Ed thought maybe someone had broken in and was fiddling downstairs with the instrument. Ed went down to check it out, and as soon as he entered the museum where the Warrens' haunted items are kept, the organ would just stop. Yeah, creepy. And also annoying. Like, why do ghosts always do that? It's so like trickster of them, you know? This would happen over and over and over again. The organ finally stayed quiet semi-permanently when after the Warrens asked a priest to bless the organ on a regular basis. Apparently it needed to be continuously cleansed or else the mysterious pianist would start their eerie tune again. Yeah, organs have to be the scariest instrument on this planet. So Halloween-y sounding, you know what I mean? And so Dracula-ish. Toccata and D minor, just Number 4, the wedding dress. Your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life, isn't it? Dressed to the nines, till death do us part, cake smashed into your face, yada yada yada, and of course, that iconic wedding dress, you know? Yeah, it's tradition. So what's this wedding dress doing in the Warrens Occult Museum then? Well, the official story behind the white gown in the Occult Museum is that of the White Lady of Union Graveyard. She has been spotted for decades. Many claim they have seen the lady in white at Union Cemetery. She's said to walk the graveyard at night, and locals tell us they've also seen her on nearby roads. Union Cemetery sits just off the junction of routes 59 and 136 in Easton, Connecticut. The legend goes, it's the home of a spiritual entity that allegedly walks the property. I can tell you that now for a fact that this place is haunted. It's one of the most haunted places around, said Lorraine Warren herself. Yeah, and she's seen some stuff in her time. One of the most infamous encounters is that late one night a man was driving down Stepney Road in his pickup truck just past Union Cemetery. Out of nowhere, a woman in a white dress appeared in the middle of the road. The man couldn't slow down in time and struck the woman head on. When the man screeched to the side of the road, there was no sight of the woman he had hit. Apparently this happens more often than you think on that road. Whoever she was, apparently the couple has her dress locked in the Museum of the Occult Finds and deems it spooky enough to leave it alone. Number 3. The Purple Sapphire. Well, not really a sapphire, but actually an amethyst. The spiky purple quartz looking thing. Hey, who said that haunted to hell items can't be precious and beautiful? Well, don't say that, because apparently this one is cursed, like cursed. The mysterious Delhi purple sapphire is now permanently on display as part of the Natural History Museum's vault collection of precious gemstones. The mysterious stone is rumored to have been stolen by a British soldier from the Temple of Indra, the Hindu god of war and weather, in Kanpur, India, during the Indian Mutiny of 1857. It was brought to England by Colonel W. Ferris, whose family then supposedly suffered many financial and many health problems. I love how financials first. The stone was given to Edward Heron Allen, a scientist and writer, in 1890, who claimed to have started having bad things happen to him and those who were lucky enough or unlucky enough to see or hold it. He came to the conclusion it was hexed with a curse, and eventually decided to have it stored away in a bank vault inside 7 locked boxes with a note of warning to anyone who dare handle it. Allen warned that the Delhi purple sapphire is cursed and is stained with blood and the dishonor of everyone who has ever owned it. Weary of its alleged powers, he kept it locked away in 7 boxes and surrounded by good luck charms. He also left strict instructions not to remove the amethyst until 33 years after his death. It's very specific. Heron Allen's own daughter was forbidden under every circumstance to even touch or handle the stone, which, half a year after her father's death, she donated the amethyst to the Natural History Museum where it's on display today. Okay, so his own daughter donated this thing. She didn't even want it. That's a little spooky. Now, I mean, he was a writer, and writers can exaggerate sometimes, but not giving it to his own daughter and her not wanting it at all after his death? That sounds a little bizarre to me. Number 2, the haunted book. Okay, so sometimes we all find spooky doodles from the past we drew as kids. Finding old spooky pictures or letters written, that can be fun and great for scary stories. Apparently I drew aliens a lot. Yeah, who'd have thought? This next item holds more than just letters though. It holds power. This haunted book was given to Brighton's very own haunted house, Preston Manor, after a Kent family who owned it claimed it caused them to be plagued by ghostly visitors and spectral visions. A haunted ledger which was found bricked up behind a shop wall has been acquired by the museum. Phew. The ledger was donated by Josephine Beniovitz. The book was discovered by her father, Tony Beniovitz, in 1988 when he was demolishing a shop which closed in 1984. Having taken it home, the father and daughter believed they suffered a number of spiritual visions and images of men, women, children, and apparently soldiers on horseback. The ledger, which dates from the First World War, was a clue at maybe who was visiting them. The daughter was told by one of the spirits that the book must be returned to Brighton where its first entry was written, which was in December 1915. The terrified family delivered it to Preston Manor, which is known for its paranormal occurrences and spiritual events. A medium visiting the house inspected the book and confirmed that they could sense evil omens emanating from its pages. It remains locked up only to be viewed after cleansed. Yeah, I don't think I'm going anywhere near this thing. Yeah, all those old books are usually wrapped in like someone's skin or something evil. Yeah. No thanks. And coming in at the number 1 spot, the Iceman. This definitely had to be my number 1 spot. And it's not my favorite UFC fighter, Chuck Liddell. But this is the most terrifying find of all. Not really much of an item either, but more like a 5,000-year-old frozen and perfectly preserved human mummy that was discovered in 1991 in the Otzal Alps in Italy. Otzi, of course, is the name researchers chose to name the mummy for obvious location reasons. This frozen mummy is of a man who believed to have lived 5,300 years ago. Otzi is believed to have been apparently murdered before being frozen in its time. This is claimed after the discovery of an arrowhead found embedded in his left shoulder and various other wounds on his body. He also has multiple different DNA types on his clothes, suggesting suggesting he was in combat or in danger in his last moments. The nature of his life and the circumstances of his death need more investigation, but scientists believe he's Europe's oldest natural known human mummy, offering a very shiny new view of the Copper Age. A huge glacier surrounded him after he died of exposure and preserved his body in a mile-high ice cube. However, this is where it really gets spooky. Once unearthed, rumors of a curse surfaced too and grew stronger as people linked to him began to die, often in accidents or natural health problems. All in all, so far 7 deaths have been tied or loosely related to Otzi's de-thawing, including forensic pathologist who was killed in a car accident en route to give a speech about Otzi the Iceman, a mountaineer who died in an avalanche, a hiker who discovered the Iceman on a hike with his wife and later perished after falling down a treacherous path. A molecular archaeologist was found dead in his home after he was finalizing a book about Otzi. The head of the forensic team died of a heart attack, another discoverer died of a brain tumor, and another researcher perished of multiple sclerosis. Yo, say what you will about curses if you believe them or not, when people start dropping all involved in this one find, there's gotta be some sort of otherworldly connection going on here. Whatever the case may be, this find is one of the most scientifically precious and also one of the most spiritually terrifying. Should we study this mummy some more and unearth more mysteries of the past, or should we risk the lives of those who study it? Number 5. The Ring of Silvianus. The Vine Ring, aka the Ring of Silvianus, is a gold ring dating back to the 4th century AD. The ring was discovered in the fields of a farm in 1785 in Hampshire, England. Originally the property of a British Roman named Silvianus, apparently it was stolen by a person named Senicianus, upon which Silvianus hexed the ring with a curse. That's right. In 1888, the owner of the property wrote about the ring in a history of his property, which is now a National Trust property. The ring went on display there in April 2013, where it's been ever since. Oddly, in 1929, during excavations of the site of the Roman Temple of Nodens at Lydney Park, archaeologist Sir Mortimer Wheeler discovered the now apparent curse that goes with said ring. Consulting shortly after with one J.R.R. Tolkien. That's interesting. The ring is apparently much larger than most rings as well and was perhaps made to be worn over gloves. The band of the ring has 10 edges. Among it is the goddess Venus engraved, along with the saying, "Live in God." Yeah, that's pretty awesome. The lore goes, while at the temple Silvianus' gold ring vanished. Believing the thief to be an individual named Senicianus, Silvianus demanded supernatural justice. And at the Temple of Nodens, crafted and carved a hexed tablet known as the Curse Tablet, or Defixio. On the tablet, he wrote, quote, "For the god Nodens, Silvianus has lost a ring and has donated 1/2 of its worth to Nodens. Among those named Senicianus, permit no good health until it is returned to the Temple of Nodens." Yeah, that sounds like a spell to me. You better return that, buddy. Nodens is like Poseidon. Yeah, that's not good if he's out there looking for you. Number 4. Tutankhamun's trumpets. The trumpets are a pair that were first found in the burial chamber of the 18th dynasty pharaoh, famously known as King Tut. One sterling silver and one bronze. They are considered to be the oldest operational trumpets in the world, and the only known surviving examples from ancient Egypt. The trumpets were found in 1922 by Howard Carter during the excavation of Tutankhamun's tomb. Yeah, you know, the whole cursed tomb thing. The bronze trumpet was discovered in the tomb's antechamber in a large chest containing other military objects and walking sticks. The silver trumpet was found in the actual burial chamber. Both are engraved with decorative images of the gods. Similar looking trumpets feature in Egyptian wall paintings that are usually, but not always, but most associated with military and war. Silent for more than 3,000 years, the trumpets were played for a live audience of 150 million people through a BBC broadcast live in 1939. And then World War II happened, because apparently the curator of the Tutankhamun collection at the Egyptian Museum says whenever someone blows into it, a war occurs. The same thing happened in 1967 and the 1991 Gulf War when a student was doing research on Tutankhamun's collection and gave her a whirl. Yeah. The bronze trumpet was one of the artifacts stolen from the Egyptian Museum in Cairo during the Egyptian looting riots in 2011 and then, hilariously enough, returned weeks later. Yeah, apparently it's like really cursed, like haunted cursed. Guy didn't want it anymore. Shocker. Number 3, the statue of Osiris. And speaking of ancient Egypt, we arrive yet again at something stolen. The statue of Osiris. In 1971, during an excavation in Saqqara, Egyptologist Walter Bryan Emery found a small statue of the Egyptian god of death, Osiris. He and his assistant returned to the dig site's office in a nearby village as Emery took the statue of Osiris with him. Once at his house, Emery went to the bathroom to shower, and after moments, his assistant began to hear Emery screaming. He found him clutching the sink, clearly experiencing some kind of trauma. His assistant said that Emery stood there paralyzed. I grabbed him by the shoulders and dragged him onto the couch. Then I ran for the telephone. Emery was diagnosed with paralysis of the right side of his body and was unable to speak. He actually died the following day. Talk about curse of the pharaohs. It's been said that there was a possession of a Canadian woman who believed her home had also become haunted by said statue. The woman gave it to the Ontario Museum, which returned it home to Egypt. Have we seen this video of said statue moving on its own? Like, this is from a Manchester museum, and this thing is just moving on its own all day. Yeah, this god's pretty powerful, and this stuff needs to be respected, you know? And returned. Like, you can't just steal stuff and throw it up in a museum overseas. Especially the stuff that clearly says in hieroglyphics, do not remove this, you will be cursed. We're uncovering more and more buried Egypt every day. Just please be respectful and leave the stuff alone after discovering and documenting it. And whatever you do, don't play any more instruments, okay? Number 2, ballista balls. Almost 2,000 stones were found during archaeological excavations in the Gamla Natural Reserve, of which the ancient Jewish city of Golan Heights used to sit. This is the site where the largest number of ballista stones from the early Roman period were found. Basically, these little sanded stones are perfectly smooth and perfectly designed for ancient machine gun slingshots. Oh yeah, and of course, by sling or hand. In 2020, a ballista ball in Israel was returned to the authorities 15 years after it was stolen. Apparently the balls were very cursed. Why was this particular ballista stone considered to be so cursed? Who knows? The artifact has been returned by an anonymous person under the name Moshe Manis. According to Moshe, the thief who stole the ballista stone stole it in 2005 when they were a teenager. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's definitely not me. No, it's a friend of mine. Yeah, no, definitely not me. Him and his friends were touring a display of ballista stones at the Jerusalem Walls National Park in the city of David. These ballista stones were used by the Romans when they were fighting in Jerusalem in 70 AD as part of the first Jewish-Roman war, known also as the Great Jewish Revolt. The man returned the 2,000-year-old Roman ballista balls from Gamla and actually wrote a little note on it saying, quote, "These are 2 Roman ballista balls from Gamla, from a residential quarter of the foot of the summit. I stole them in July 1995, and since then, they have brought me nothing but trouble. Please do not steal antiques." You said it, buddy. Those stones have seen their fair share of bloodshed. You don't want any part of that smoke. And coming in at number 1, the Wailing Skull. Our number 1 spot, of course, the one that scares me the most. Skull banshees screaming throughout the middle of the night. Oh yeah, just screeching ghost heads. You know this is a thing, right? Like, way more common than we think. Like, they're like everywhere. Burton Agnes Hall is in East Yorkshire, was built in 1598 during the reign of Elizabeth I by 3 sisters of the Griffith family. The youngest sister, Anne, was apparently attacked. They beat her after she apparently refused to give them her belongings. Locals heard her cries and came to her rescue and returned her home, though sadly perishing 5 days later. On her deathbed, she requested that the head be placed within the walls of the unfinished manor. The family ignored her request, and after she was buried and the house's construction was complete, the sisters began to hear sinister noises throughout the empty house. Well, screams, actually. The sisters returned to their family's vault to fulfill the past sister's request, and when they opened the tomb, the body was completely intact except for the now smiling skull across the room from the body. Okay, the head was taken back to the Burton Agnes Hall, and miraculously, the noises and disturbances stopped. It's like she asked to be there or something. The noises would only happen again when later residents tried to remove the skull from the premises. Yeah, I'd put that back immediately. Don't mess with people's scary like this, you know? The skull was later cemented in the walls for safety. Yeah, I'd hope so. Although the noises have stopped, and still makes a ghostly appearance apparently on the anniversary of her death. I don't know why people go around touching things, moving them around, like leave them where they layeth, you know? Number 5, the family jewels. Some things get passed on generation to generation, some are begged, some are borrowed, and some are stolen. Our first cursed item has made its way across so many seas at the price of many lives. At a whopping 186 carats, the Koh-i-Noor diamond may look precious beyond all belief, but this cursed gemstone has a much darker, unbelievable side too. The name derives from the Persian Hindi words mountain of light. Many theories exist as to its original owner and who was originally cut for. A Hindu description of the diamond warns that, quote, "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all of its misfortunes. Only God or women can wear it with impunity." Well, that's jarring, to say the least. Right there in writing, huh? Yeah. It passed between the hands of various rulers, blood-soaked era after another, a king who blinded his own son, and a ruler whose head had become encrusted with liquid molten gold was paid for this price. Legend has it that the stone's origins of causing death and misfortune to any male who owns or wears it stems from brothers murdering each other to even sons murdering their fathers over it. But does it actually carry a curse affecting men who wear it? First owned by the emperors of the Mughal Empire in India, it was taken and added with the Timur ruby to make an armband for ruler of the Peacock Empire. The diamond then went to Sikh Maharaja Ranjit Singh. After his death, his 5-year-old son Duleep Singh, the last Maharaja of the Sikh Empire, would be the last male who ever seemed to wear it. Since being owned by the British royal family, and oddly enough, it's only ever been worn by females. After Queen Victoria's death, Queen Alexandra got it and was used to crown her at her coronation in 1902. The diamond was then transferred to Queen Mary's crown in 1911 and finally to the Queen Mother's crown in 1937, where it remained for more than 80 years. When Queen Elizabeth died in 2002, the crown was placed on top of her casket for the funeral. All of the crowns are now on display in the Jewel House at the Tower of London, with crystal replicas of the diamonds set in the older models they were in. So what's the deal? Is this thing still cursed? Did the royal family know something that we didn't? Maybe. Number 4, the statues of Lem. The Women of Lem statue was discovered in Lem, Cyprus in 1878 and dates back to about 3500 BCE. The statue eventually earned the nickname the Goddess of Death after 4 different families experienced tragedy while handling and owning the carved stones. The first owner, Lord Elfont, along with his entire family, perished within 6 years of owning the statue, all from mysterious and rapid illnesses. The other 2 owners, Ivor Minucci and Lord Thompson Noel, also died along with their entire families just a few short years after obtaining the statue within their homes. The 4th owner, Sir Alan Beaverbrook, died alongside his wife and 2 daughters of mysterious causes while in possession of the carved rock. Although his sons did not believe in the curse attached to the statue, out of fear of the sudden misfortunes around them, they decided to gift the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh the find, where it is now encased in glass, safe, unable to bear any other family bad news. You gotta think, someone was just like sitting there back then chiseling this rock like 6,000 years ago. What were they thinking? What were they saying out loud? What were they looking at? Why did they seem to have blessed this rock with so much evil and misfortune? You tell me. Number 3, the mummy. Not actually a mummy, but the mummy board, or coffin, or lid. The board is painted of an unknown high-status woman from the 21st or 22nd dynasty. Timescale for you, that's about 1,000 years BCE. The British Museum's unlucky mummy has earned quite the reputation for causing destruction through its ancient curse. The mummy was found at Thebes in Greece in the late 1800s, and tales of its curse started soon after its discovery. It's said that of the 4 young Englishmen who bought it, 2 died in a shooting accident and 2 died of health problems. A string of illnesses, accidents, and deaths following this are said to be attributed to the lid. One of the most infamous rumors about the mummy's curse is that it caused the sinking of the Titanic. Wait a minute, what? One of the victims on board was a journalist who apparently was the first to publish articles about the mummy's find and the curse that went with it. Survivors from the disaster recall hearing stories about the ship of an ominous artifact that has a sinister reputation. As the mummy stories and the rumors spread, people who survived began to ask the question if the rumors had caused the disaster that night. The unlucky mummy is now an ancient Egyptian artifact in the collection of the British Museum in London. The identity of the original owner is still being studied and the related causes brought on by it. Due to the brief hieroglyphic inscriptions of short religious phrases, scientists are still trying to decipher the name and the curse that comes along with it, and the actual location of where the body disappeared to. It's been feared since the discovery in the late 1880s, and the mummy's lid has acquired a reputation credited with causing death, injury, and large-scale disasters, earning the nickname the unlucky mummy. None of these stories have any basis in fact, of course, but the mummy serves as a spiritual question mark and remains a mystery to scientists who crack the code open. Yo, where's Brendan Fraser when you need him, right? He can figure this whole thing out. Number 2, the haunted bed. Apparently there's a bed that makes you more dizzy and have more sinister evil visions than that of a night on a waterbed. Yeah, I've had a couple hungover nights lost at sea, let me tell you. Gets pretty choppy out there. Highly don't recommend it. But this bed, I also highly don't recommend. The lavishly ornate great bed of ware does not like you sleeping in it. The hardwood oak bed is richly decorated and carved with figures and scenes you could daydream for, well, days over. It's so large that it's rumored to comfortably sleep 4 couples. Yeah. Talk about a California king. There's a tale that suggests that the bed was made in the 15th century for King Edward IV by a very gifted carpenter, but through the years found itself being passed between the inns of ware where commoners were able to sleep in it, break the legs, and apparently cover it head to toe in graffiti. Yeah, the disrespect alone. The defacing got so bad that apparently the ghost of the maker haunts those who are not of royal blood. Basically not blessed by God to rule. It's so old and so haunted that apparently people who spend the night are woken up violently by specters watching them sleep. Apparently there are so many initials carved into the wood, images drawn on it, that it's hard to know who actually the bed was originally fitted for, and who actually cursed it. Some researchers believe that the curse surrounding the bed could have actually been carved into it with symbols and text that hexed the next user. Whatever its history, it's haunted. The bed can now be found in the British galleries of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. We need like the Long Island medium to take a nap in it, you know what I mean? See what she thinks. And coming in at the number 1 spot, the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army was discovered in 1974 by a group of farmers. Yang Zifa, his 5 brothers, and neighbor were digging a well east of the Qin Emperor's tomb mound at Mount Li. For centuries, occasional reports mentioned pieces of terracotta figures and fragments of the Qin necropolis. Roofing tiles, bricks, and masonry were regularly found. But when they discovered heads, Chinese archaeologists started to investigate. To this day, it remains the largest pottery figurine group ever found. The Terracotta Army seemed to be a collection of terracotta sculptures depicting the armies of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. It is a form of funerary art buried with the emperor around 209 BCE with the purpose of protecting the emperor in the afterlife. The figures were discovered in Lingtong County outside Shaanxi, China. The figures vary in height according to their rules, and they're all dressed in different garbs. The tallest, of course, being the generals. These statues include warriors, chariots equipped with horses, more than 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, 520 horses, and 150 cavalry. Other terracotta non-military figures were found in pits close by, including officials, acrobats, strongmen, and musicians. Yo, are we sure that Medusa didn't just like make her way through China and start stoning people in time with her looks? Because that's like an entire city made out of clay. In the records of the Grand Historian, China's 24 dynastic histories, it was written that work on the mausoleum began in 246 BCE, soon after Emperor Qin ascended the throne. Apparently the project involved 700,000 workers. Yeah, I'd really hope so, because that many perfectly sculpted figures are so realistic, there must have been a city of artists. The site is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site and has been since 1987. This is scary just looking at it. I'm not convinced this was just an art project for the journey between spirit realms. I think this was used as a decoy for battle. 20,000 figurines just chillin' waiting? Seems pretty intimidating to me. Whatever its origins, it's jarring to look at. What do you think? Well, there you have it, folks. 5 cursed items that scare historians so much that literally all of these are tucked away safe in a museum with lots and lots of security cameras. I don't think anyone's breaking in to steal a haunted bed, but who knows, maybe these items have more cursing to do. Let me know down below in the comments what other gems I'm missing, and I'll dive in deep next time. As always, I've been Kyle McWaters. Keep those lights on, keep those items where they are, and I'll see you next time for some more scary stuff. Stay spooky, everybody.
Number 5 on this list is the smelly photo. Alright everybody, beware of the smelly photo, for if you purchase it, then you'll be cursed with a horrible smelling odor for all of eternity. Alright, so maybe it's not that dramatic, but apparently this is actually a thing. Mental Floss says this historic daggerette type is reportedly inhabited by a Victorian gent named Martin. It was initially found in the eaves of an attic, and it's owner would bring it out for guests to see. Eventually, people began to notice that certain smells would mysteriously appear and just as mysteriously disappear, such as the scent of roses and cigar or pipe smoke, or even the odor of smoke from a wood fire, the seller writes. When questioned with a Ouija board, the spirit inside was sometimes talkative and even playful, but other times reticent. But some spooky things started happening in the house, like objects disappearing or being moved, and footsteps and whispers faintly heard. These strange goings on became more frequent until finally the image was removed from the house and sent to a collector who reports some continued activity. So I'm unsure if you can still buy this thing or if it's completely off the market for good, but realistically, you probably shouldn't want to be buying it anyways. Your house basically becomes immediately haunted with weird smells if you purchase this photo. Now, I will admit, some of these smells really aren't that bad, like roses. If this picture can just make my house smell like roses all the time, then I mean, that sounds pretty nice. Or honestly, cigar smoke can be really nice too. Like, there's definitely a time and place to have a good whiff of a cigar, but the big problem is that you can't really control this thing. So if my guy wanted to just scent the house up with the odor of unwashed 1800s Victorian era man, then he could totally do that. This item isn't gonna kill you or anything, but I do think that the novelty would wear off pretty fast and it could get annoying very quickly. Just make sure that you have some Febreze on hand if you do choose to buy it. Number 4 on this list is the haunted donkey. So this one could be very good or very bad depending on the person who purchases it. Mental Floss says this small decorative juice container has a surprisingly spooky backstory. According to the owner, it spontaneously fills up with water. The inherited piece has been exhibiting the odd behavior for years since the owner was a child. At first, they suspected that their grandmother, who owned the item at the time, was filling it with water, but once she died, they discovered that there was something else at play. One night, the seller knocked against the jug by accident and noticed it sounded like it had liquid in it. When I investigated, I found that there was indeed water in it, they wrote. I thought maybe it was a mistake, they explained, but it's happened sporadically ever since. I'm not scared or anything, but I'm just not into the type of stuff. I wish my Nana well in the afterlife, but it's just not for me, they said. Now, one thing that isn't mentioned there is what happens if you drink the water. Apparently, if you have a good heart and are kind and caring and look out for your fellow human, then drinking this water is fine and it's believed to even give you good luck. But if you don't possess those qualities that I just listed, if you're rude, if you're selfish, and if you're greedy, if you only look out for yourself and will walk over other individuals for your own personal gain, then drinking this water will do the opposite. You will be cursed with bad luck and it will be very hard to get rid of it. So that's what I mean. This item can be very polarizing and can be super good depending on who buys it, or it could be super bad. Number 3 on this list is the Tai Jin mask. We have another cursed item from eBay here that can certainly have its benefits but also have its drawbacks as well if you aren't careful with it. Mental Floss says the person selling this mask claims that they personally witnessed a witch in Thailand capture a jinn or genie in it. Among the mask's alleged talents are the ability to bring the owner riches and the ability to keep vampires away. Both are useful skills, but they come with a price. You must make offerings of food and drink to keep the jinn happy. Not to mention the fact that for the first month you have to meditate on his name 3 times a day for 20 minutes each. So here's my thing. Riches and the ability to ward off vampires, that sounds cool, I like it. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a magical mask that can make you rich? That'd be awesome. Granted, there is that whole other thing too. This is a jinn, and even though that's really cool, I don't want to fall into a trap of fully trusting this thing. Genies are very tricky. They say one thing, you take it at face value, but they mean something else entirely. So this thing might say something and make you believe that you're getting rich, and then totally flip the script on you and have it mean something else. Also, let's not forget that if you mess up a little bit and don't offer this thing food or water or meditate on it 3 times a day, then it will probably choose to respond decently badly to you. These are all risks that I personally don't think I'm willing to take. Also, here's my other thing. Like, if this mask is gonna give you tons of riches, then why is somebody selling it on eBay? Why would you need to sell this thing if you're already super rich based on the mask? And if it was that great, then wouldn't you want to keep it? I don't know, just some stuff to consider before you pull the trigger on this thing. Number 2 on this list is Lisa's shoes. Lisa was a young girl who lived back in the Victorian era a long time ago. Now apparently she died way too soon. We think it was sepsis, but we don't really know when she died or why she died for sure. All we know is that she was taken from the earth way too early. Mental Floss says, said to contain the spirit of a little girl called Lisa, these shoes were found by someone who was curating their late aunt's estate, tucked in a nursery closet alongside various Victorian clothes and toys. They suspected they were haunted, the seller writes, since there was a lot of knocking in the nursery closet. If actually possessed, tap dancing might wake one up in the middle of the night. The noise wasn't the only indication of the shoes' otherworldly nature. The house they were found in was rumored to be home to a number of ghosts, including that of a woman who had murdered her baby there in the 19th century, and the spirit of a 9-year-old girl who died of sepsis. So, if you're the type of individual who likes to fall asleep to the sound of cursed shoes dancing all over the floor, then I guess this is for you. I don't know how many of those people are out there, but hey, no judgment here. I, personally, do not have any interest in purchasing some cursed shoes, but that's just me. Apparently, if your heart really does desire such a thing, then a few clicks on eBay is all it's gonna take. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Anguished Man painting. The Anguished Man painting has been something that we've talked a decent amount about on this channel when it comes to haunted and cursed paintings. Well, you can buy this haunted / cursed painting on eBay if you wanted to do so. The seller of this oil painting describes it as a horrific paranormal portrait. The artist is unknown, but according to its owner, the artwork may be responsible for a number of spooky goings on around the house. Since owning this painting, I've experienced a number of strange paranormal events that cannot be easily explained, the seller writes in the listing. These include hearing disembodied footsteps from elsewhere in the house, the sound of bird songs appearing out of thin air in the living room, and finally observing a heavy metal door latch lift by itself and the kitchen door open by itself. So that's a hard pass from me, guys. Not only will this painting curse you and your home, but also, like, really isn't that great of a painting to begin with. I mean, I don't want to disrespect the artist here. I'm sure that they had a great vision, but I don't really want to have a picture of a screaming dude in my home just looking at me all the time. Even if this thing wasn't haunted and was just totally normal, that would still scare the bejesus out of me late at night when I'm half asleep going to get a glass of water or something. If you are about it though, then hit them up on eBay and you can get the Anguished Man painting in your home today. Number 5 on this list is Robert the Doll. Robert the Doll is one of the most haunted and cursed dolls on the entire planet. Ghosts and Gravestones says the story of Robert the Doll dates back to the early 1900s when a young boy named Eugene Robert Otto was given a one-of-a-kind handmade doll by a servant that worked for his parents in his home. Eugene, who everybody called Gene, named the doll Robert and quickly became attached to his new friend. The home where Eugene lived, now called the Artist's House, is located at 534 Eaton Street and was built between 1890 and 1898. It was here that Eugene was given Robert the doll and where a friendship that lasted throughout his lifetime and beyond was forged. While he seemed like an ordinary cloth doll, it wasn't long before Robert was involved in strange and somewhat terrifying events. The first hint that something out of the ordinary was happening was one night when Gene, who was only 10 years old, awoke to find Robert the doll sitting at the end of his bed staring at him. Moments later, his mother was awakened by his screams for help and the sounds of furniture being overturned in her son's bedroom. Gene cried for help, begging his mother to rescue him. When she was finally able to wrench the locked door open, she saw poor Gene curled up in fear on his bed, his room in shambles, and Robert the doll sitting at the foot of the bed. And all the child could say was Robert did it. Now, this was the first instance where Robert was acting up, but there have been tons of experiences since then where this doll is just doing things that really shouldn't be doing. He now lives in East Martello, where visitors flock to see him, although it's a bad idea. There are letters and notes all around Robert from people that have come to see him, all begging for Robert's forgiveness. Apparently, taking a picture of Robert without his permission will cause him to start to haunt you. This curse has affected hundreds to thousands of people, and they all usually end up coming back to Robert begging for freedom from this curse. At this point, paranormal investigators have learned that messing with Robert really isn't the best idea, and just leaving this doll alone, probably the smartest thing to do. Number 4 on this list is the screaming skull. Last I checked, if there is no meat on the bone, then a skull shouldn't be screaming. That's kind of what's going down with this one extremely haunted skull in Burton Agnes Hall, England. Instablog says, what if you touch an object and then you hear terrible, deafening screams? That is precisely what happens when you touch this skull at an Elizabethan manor in England. Burton Agnes Hall is the house of Catherine Ann Griffith, who was brutally murdered by numerous bullies in 1620. Her skull still rests inside the house. Why? Because whenever somebody tried to take it out of the house, what happened next terrified them to the bone. People who have tried to touch or disturb that skull have reported seeing a scary ghost walk in and utter a deafening scream. This scared the people so much that they actually ran out of the house in terror. If you're up for a scary challenge, then this might be your chance to prove your mettle to the world, but for the weak-hearted ones, it's wise to stay away. And yeah, guys, I mean, I agree with that article right there. Probably best not to mess with this thing. I mean, a bunch of paranormal investigators won't even go here anymore. If a bunch of paranormal investigators think that this area is too scary for them, then sorry guys, I'm tapping out. It's way too scary for me too. Number 3 on this list is the Maori warrior masks. Now, these warrior masks hold a curse that won't affect everyone, just a small portion of people. Specifically, women who are soon to be expecting children. The Occult Museum says New Zealand's Maori warriors are part of an ancient tribe who would carve unique masks when it was time for battle. When a man died in the mask, it was believed that his soul would remain trapped in the mask they were wearing. Although their mythology does not dictate that any harm is done by the trapped souls, the presence of the masks has a strange and sometimes fatal effect on pregnant women. Women who are expecting often experience complications when they come in contact with the masks. It's unknown why this phenomenon occurs, but the museum that holds the remaining masks posts a warning that pregnant women should stay away. The literal museum is out here warning pregnant women not to come. That's how you know that this thing's seriously dangerous. Like, whenever a business or enterprise does something that's actually gonna lose them money, that's when you have my attention. Considering they just lost an entire demographic of people, I'm now listening and buying into this curse. The paranormal investigators who aren't pregnant have taken a look at this, and they're having a hard time getting to the bottom of it. Some people have suggested that the Maori tribe thought that pregnant women were taboo, but that also doesn't really make any sense, because then how would they have repopulated their tribe? Regardless of why it is the way that it is, just know that if you are expecting, that's not the right time to take a look at these masks. Number 2 on this list is the Surrey ghost car. So this is a weird one and definitely something that paranormal investigators are a bit spooked by. List 25 says crashes are common